Just when it looked like one of Hollywood's most talked-about legal battles was finally coming to an end, another explosive courtroom showdown has taken center stage. The massive lawsuits may be largely behind them, but Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively are now locked in a brand-new fight, this time over millions of dollars in legal fees. And judging by the latest court filings, neither side is willing to give an inch. The latest dispute centers on Blake Lively's request for more than $8 million in attorney's fees following the dismissal of Justin Baldoni's $400 million defamation lawsuit. According to previous court rulings, Blake became eligible to seek recovery of certain legal fees connected to successfully defending against that claim. But while her legal team argues the request is fully supported under the law, Baldoni and his representatives strongly disagree, setting the stage for yet another high-stakes courtroom battle. According to newly filed court documents obtained by TMZ, Baldoni's legal team argues that Blake's request is dramatically inflated and goes far beyond what should be recoverable. His attorney contends that the fee request includes legal work unrelated to defending the defamation case and asks the judge either to reject the request entirely or reduce it from more than $8 million to a much smaller six-figure amount. The filing contains unusually strong language, signaling that this financial dispute could become just as fiercely contested as the lawsuits that came before it. Blake's side, however, isn't backing down either. A source close to the actress has disputed Baldoni's interpretation of the law, arguing that the relevant statute allows recovery for successful defense of the overall litigation, not just one individual claim. With both sides offering completely different readings of the law, the final outcome will ultimately depend on how the court interprets the legal arguments presented by each team. So why are Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively still battling in court after much of their larger legal conflict has already been resolved? What exactly is included in the disputed $8 million request? And why are both sides so convinced the judge should rule in their favor? The answers reveal that this Hollywood legal saga may not be over just yet. But before Justin Baldoni's latest court filing grabbed headlines, it was Blake Lively's multimillion-dollar request that reignited this legal battle. After years of lawsuits, public statements, and courtroom filings tied to the It Ends With Us dispute, the focus has now shifted away from the original allegations and toward one major financial question: who should pay the legal bill? The latest chapter began after a judge dismissed Justin Baldoni's $400 million defamation lawsuit against Blake Lively. Following that ruling, Blake sought to recover the attorney's fees she says were incurred while successfully defending against the defamation claims. According to court filings, her legal team is requesting more than $8 million, arguing that the law entitles her to recover those costs after prevailing on that portion of the litigation. For many people following the case, the size of the request immediately became a story of its own. $8 million is an extraordinary amount, even by Hollywood standards, and it quickly sparked debate online. Some observers argued that lengthy, high-profile litigation involving multiple law firms and extensive court filings can generate enormous legal expenses. Others questioned whether every dollar requested should ultimately be shifted to the opposing party. Those questions are now at the heart of the dispute. It's important to note that requesting attorney's fees does not automatically mean a court will award the full amount. In cases where fee recovery is permitted, judges typically review the request carefully, considering both the legal basis for awarding fees and whether the amount sought is reasonable under the circumstances. That means Blake's request represents what her legal team believes should be awarded, not a figure the court has already approved. Another factor adding complexity is the procedural history of the case. According to previous reports, much of the broader legal conflict between Blake and Justin has already been resolved through settlement, avoiding a trial on the remaining breach of contract and retaliation claims. However, the issue of attorney's fees remained unresolved, leaving this financial dispute as one of the final major issues still before the court. For Blake's legal team, the request is about recovering what they believe the law allows after successfully defending against the dismissed defamation claims. But Justin Baldoni's side sees the situation very differently. According to his latest filing, the problem isn't simply the size of the request. It's what he claims the request actually includes. And that's where this courtroom battle takes another dramatic turn. But it didn't take long for Justin Baldoni's legal team to respond, and their answer was anything but subtle. Rather than negotiating over the amount Blake Lively requested, Baldoni's attorneys asked the court to reject the multi-million-dollar request altogether or dramatically reduce it. Their latest filing makes one thing clear. They believe Blake's legal bill goes far beyond what the law allows. According to court documents obtained by TMZ, Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, argues that Blake's request for more than $8 million is wildly overinflated and unsupported by the evidence presented to the court. The filing claims Blake has failed to demonstrate that she is legally entitled to recover the full amount she is seeking. Instead of simply disputing the dollar figure, Baldoni's team challenges the overall scope of the request, arguing that it includes work they believe should never be charged to him. The filing goes even further, describing Blake's fee request as over-inclusive. According to Baldoni's legal team, the request allegedly bundles together legal work that extends well beyond defending against the dismissed defamation lawsuit. In their view, attorneys' fees should only cover work that qualifies under the applicable law, not every legal expense incurred during the broader dispute. That's the central argument driving their opposition. Rather than accepting an $8 million award, Baldoni's attorneys presented the judge with an alternative. If the court decides Blake is entitled to recover attorney's fees at all, they argue the amount should be reduced dramatically, from more than $8 million to a much smaller six-figure sum. While they don't dispute that the court has authority to consider attorney's fees, they strongly disagree with what they characterize as the scale and breadth of Blake's request. The tone of the filing also reflects how fiercely both sides continue to contest even the final financial aspect of the case. Although much of the underlying litigation has already been resolved, this latest dispute shows that neither party is prepared to concede ground when millions of dollars remain at stake. What some expected to be the final chapter has instead become another intense legal confrontation. Of course, these arguments represent Baldoni's legal position rather than findings by the court. Judges routinely evaluate competing fee requests by reviewing legal standards, supporting documentation, and objections from both parties before deciding what, if anything, should be awarded. No ruling has yet been made on Baldoni's latest objections. But perhaps the most attention-grabbing part of Baldoni's filing wasn't the amount of money he challenged. It was one specific argument buried within the legal documents. According to his attorneys, some of the fees Blake wants reimbursed relate to matters that they believe should never have been included in the first place. And that claim has quickly become one of the most debated aspects of the entire dispute. But while the size of the $8 million request grabbed the headlines, one specific passage in Justin Baldoni's court filing quickly became the biggest talking point. Rather than focusing only on the total amount, Baldoni's legal team argued that some of the legal work included in Blake Lively's request had little or nothing to do with defending against the defamation lawsuit itself. That claim now sits at the center of the financial dispute. According to court filing obtained by TMZ, Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, argues that Blake's fee request is so broad that it includes legal work beyond the scope of what should be recoverable. In one of the filing's strongest statements, the motion claims the request sweeps in fees for research relating to Blake's own potential liability connected to her California Civil Rights Department claim, as well as work involving a Rule 11 motion for which Baldoni's team says the court had already declined to award attorneys' fees. These are legal arguments presented by Baldoni's side and are not findings made by the court. That distinction is important because Baldoni's filing isn't claiming Blake has already done anything improper. Instead, his attorneys argue that certain categories of legal work should not be shifted to him as part of an attorney's fee award. In their view, if legal research or motions relate to matters outside the successful defense of the dismissed defamation claims, those expenses should remain Blake's responsibility rather than becoming part of any reimbursement ordered by the court. The broader argument is that attorneys' fees should be closely tied to the legal work the law actually permits a prevailing party to recover. Baldoni's team contends that Blake's request goes well beyond those limits by combining multiple categories of legal services into one massive fee application. Because of that, they argue the court should either deny the request entirely or substantially reduce the amount awarded. As expected, those arguments immediately sparked discussion among legal observers and entertainment media. Some believe Baldoni's filing raises legitimate questions about how attorneys' fees should be calculated in complex litigation. Others note that fee disputes often involve detailed disagreements over billing records, legal strategy, and statutory interpretation, making it common for each side to challenge the other's calculations. Ultimately, however, those debates will be resolved by the judge, not by public opinion. At this stage, none of Baldoni's objections have been accepted or rejected by the court. His filing simply lays out the legal reasons he believes Blake's request should not be approved as submitted. Blake's legal team, however, sees the issue very differently and argues that Baldoni's interpretation of the law misses a key point. Their response introduces an entirely different reading of the statute, one that could ultimately determine how much, if anything, the court decides to award. But Justin Baldoni's latest filing didn't go unanswered. As soon as his legal team argued that Blake Lively's multimillion-dollar fee request should be rejected or dramatically reduced, Blake's side pushed back with a completely different interpretation of the law. Their response makes it clear that this isn't simply a disagreement over numbers. It's a disagreement over what the law actually allows. According to a source close to Blake, who spoke with TMZ, Baldoni's legal team is interpreting the attorney's fee statute far too narrowly. The source argues that Baldoni's opposition focuses only on the dismissed defamation claim, while the statute itself refers to the successful defense of the overall litigation. In other words, Blake's side believes the law permits recovery for legal work connected to successfully defending the case as a whole, not just one isolated claim within it. The source also pointed to another important issue. The lawsuits were consolidated by the judge during the legal proceedings. According to Blake's side, that procedural decision is significant because it means the litigation should be viewed as one combined matter rather than several completely separate cases. From their perspective, that supports their argument that the requested attorney's fees cover work performed in the broader litigation and therefore remain recoverable under the applicable statute. Blake's team also argues that Baldoni's filing doesn't fully address this point. According to the source, the opposition focuses heavily on limiting fee recovery to the defamation claim, while largely avoiding what they believe is the statute's broader language. That disagreement over statutory interpretation has now become one of the central legal questions the judge will eventually need to resolve. Of course, these statements represent Blake's legal position and the views expressed by a source close to her. They are not rulings from the court, and the judge has not yet determined which interpretation of the law will ultimately prevail. Like many complex fee disputes, both parties are presenting competing legal arguments supported by their own reading of the relevant statutes and prior court decisions. What's especially striking is that much of the underlying legal conflict between Blake and Justin has already been resolved. The remaining dispute isn't about relitigating the original claims. It's about deciding who should bear the enormous cost of the legal battle that has already taken place. With millions of dollars still on the line, neither side appears willing to compromise. That means the courtroom drama is far from over. Even after years of litigation and a broader settlement, one financial issue continues to keep both sides locked in a fierce legal fight. And as the judge prepares to review both arguments, the outcome could have consequences that extend well beyond this single Hollywood dispute. But while the legal arguments may sound highly technical, the stakes couldn't be more real. This isn't simply a disagreement over paperwork or billing records. It's a fight over millions of dollars and one of the final unresolved issues in a legal saga that has dominated entertainment headlines for months. Whatever the judge ultimately decides could shape how the entire ends of this courtroom battle is remembered. At the center of the dispute is a simple but enormously important question. Who should pay for years of expensive litigation? Blake Lively believes she's entitled to recover more than $8 million in attorney's fees following her successful defense against Justin Baldoni's dismissed defamation lawsuit. Baldoni, however, argues that the request is far too broad and includes legal work that shouldn't be shifted to him. The difference between those two positions isn't measured in thousands of dollars. It's measured in millions. The outcome also matters because attorney's fee disputes often become some of the final chapters in major civil lawsuits. Even after the primary legal claims have been resolved through dismissal or settlement, the question of who pays the legal costs can continue long after the headlines surrounding the original allegations begin to fade. That's exactly what's happening here. While much of the broader dispute between Blake and Justin has already been settled, this financial issue remains very much alive. Legal observers are also paying close attention because the judge's ruling could provide guidance on how the applicable fee statute should be interpreted in this particular case. Baldoni's side argues the recoverable fees should be limited, while Blake's team believes the statute supports a much broader award. Ultimately, the court's decision will turn on the specific facts of the case, the language of the law, and the documentation submitted by both parties, not on public opinion or social media debates. Meanwhile, the internet has been following every development closely. Supporters of Blake argue that if the law allows recovery of attorney's fees, she should receive what she's legally entitled to after successfully defending against the dismissed claims. Others believe Baldoni raises legitimate questions about whether every category of legal work included in the request should be reimbursed. As with many high-profile celebrity legal battles, opinions online have been sharply divided, even though the judge is yet to rule. One thing everyone seems to agree on is that this dispute is about more than just money. It's the final major financial battle remaining after one of Hollywood's most closely watched legal conflicts. The court's decision won't change everything that has already happened, but it will determine how the last unresolved piece of this long-running case is brought to a close. Now all eyes are on the courtroom once again. The arguments have been filed. Both sides have made their positions clear, and the next move belongs to the judge. The only question left is whether Blake will receive the full amount she requested, a reduced award, or nothing at all. But after months of lawsuits, explosive filing, and constant media attention, the biggest question now is surprisingly simple. How does this finally end? While much of the broader legal dispute between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively has already been resolved, this multi-million-dollar attorney's fee battle remains one of the last major issues still awaiting a decision. And whatever the judge decides could become the final headline in a case that has captivated Hollywood for months. The next step is now in the court's hands. After reviewing Blake Lively's request for more than $8 million in attorney's fees, along with Justin Baldoni's objections, the judge will determine whether Blake is legally entitled to recover those fees, and, if so, how much should ultimately be awarded. Judges reviewing fee petitions often examine billing records, legal arguments, statutory requirements, and objections from both sides before issuing a ruling. That means the decision will be based on the evidence and the applicable law, not the intense public debate surrounding the case. Several outcomes remain possible. The court could approve most of Blake's requests, decide that only part of the requested fees are recoverable, or agree with portions of Baldoni's objections and significantly reduce the amount. It's also possible that the judge could reject certain categories of fees while approving others. Until the court issues its decision, none of those possibilities can be ruled out. For both parties, the ruling represents more than just a financial outcome. Blake's team argues the requested fees reflect the cost of successfully defending against the dismissed defamation claims and believes the law supports recovery. Baldoni's side, meanwhile, maintains that the request includes work that should not legally be shifted to him. Those competing legal interpretations will now be weighed by the court, making the judge's ruling one of the most anticipated developments still remaining in the case. Even after this decision, it's worth remembering that high-profile civil litigation can sometimes generate additional post-ruling motions or appeals, depending on the circumstances and the issues involved. Whether that happens here remains uncertain. For now, however, both sides appear focused on convincing the court that their interpretation of the law is the correct one. No matter how the judge rules, this fee dispute has become a reminder that legal battles often continue long after the biggest headlines fade away. The lawsuits may be largely behind them, but the financial consequences are still being sorted out. And until the court reaches a final decision, this Hollywood courtroom saga isn't completely over. One thing is certain. The next ruling won't just determine who pays a legal bill. It will likely write the final chapter in one of the entertainment industry's most closely watched legal disputes. Until then, both sides can only wait for the court to decide who ultimately prevails in this final financial showdown. In the end, what many expected to be the closing chapter that ends with this legal saga has turned into one final courtroom showdown. The original lawsuits may be largely behind Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, but the fight over attorney's fees has become a multi-million-dollar battle of its own. With more than $8 million at stake, both sides remain firmly convinced that the law supports their position, leaving the court to decide who is ultimately responsible for one of Hollywood's most expensive legal disputes. Justin Baldoni's legal team argues that Blake Lively's request reaches far beyond what should be recoverable, claiming it includes legal work unrelated to successfully defending the dismissed defamation lawsuit. Blake's side strongly disagrees, maintaining that the applicable statute allows recovery for the successful defense of the broader litigation, and that the consolidated nature of the case supports the fee request. These are competing legal arguments presented by each side, and the judge has not yet ruled on which interpretation will prevail. That distinction is important because, despite the strong language appearing in recent court filings, no final decision has been made. The court will review the legal submissions, supporting documentation, and objections from both parties before determining whether Blake is entitled to recover attorney's fees, and if so, how much should be awarded. Until that ruling is issued, the financial outcome remains uncertain. Whatever the final decision, this dispute serves as a reminder that major celebrity legal battles rarely end with a single ruling or settlement. Even after the biggest claims have been resolved, questions involving legal costs, procedural issues, and financial responsibility can continue long afterward. In this case, the final chapter isn't about the original allegations. It's about who will ultimately bear the enormous cost of the litigation itself. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think Blake Lively should receive the full amount she's requesting? Or do you believe Justin Baldoni has made a strong case for reducing the award? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy breaking Hollywood legal news, celebrity courtroom drama, and entertainment updates, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story.